Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We are we're going live on two forums. We're going live here on Crowdcast and also our Facebook page. And I'm really excited to have Dr. Candice Seti here with me today. We met, I guess it's been about a year ago, maybe a little less. And we were both at an obesity health conference. I was working at the ProCare booth, and Dr. Seti just came on in and was walking through, checking things out. But I think you're going to love her. She has so much to offer, and I just thought she would be a great person to come on here, talk to you guys. She's a therapist, she's an author, she's a coach, and she is. I believe that just really, we were talking right before this, and she said that she's really committed just to helping people with that kind of that yo-yo dieting. And I think as people who are probably watching this, if you've had bariatric surgery or you're thinking about it, that's our main niche industry that we kind of talk to. You probably can relate to that. And so at that point, I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Candice, and I'm going to let her kind of tell you guys a little bit, let her tell you a little bit more about herself.
All right, here we go. Thanks, Brenda. Well, I think you did a pretty good job, but I am, well, first and foremost, a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice, and I work primarily specializing in weight loss and weight management therapy, which means I work with individuals who have a dieting history, often a long-term dieting history, have been on and off a diet for a very extended period of time and are done with that and want to learn another way, and ideally a better and more sustainable way, which is what I help them achieve by looking at all the other non-diet ways to approach weight management, whether that be behavioral change, lifestyle change, cognitive change, addressing your relationship with food, looking at causative factors, trauma factors, all the other things that tie into it, and really just getting to a place of confidence and security with themselves, with their body, with their relationship with food, with all of that. So I'm also, because of what I do, I'm also a certified personal trainer, a certified nutrition coach, a certified life coach, and a certified insomnia treatment clinician, because that all seems to tie into weight and weight management. So that's kind of who I am and what I do.
I love that. Like your personality type, I understand, because that's how I am. Whenever I start loving something, like just diving in and learning as much as you can about it, I love that about you. So what made you really interested? Like I know in your bio you have that you were a former yo-yo dieter. It's hard to see that because you don't appear to look like you've had a weight problem.
Well, I mean, that's what got me into it, is my own experience with dieting, right? When I first felt like I needed to lose weight, I did what everybody on the planet does, which is go on a diet. And I went on one of the very well-known diets out there, and I lost weight, as everybody does. And I was happy and I felt great about that, and all was good. So I went off the diet, and then what happened is, slowly, as it does for everyone, the weight started creeping back. And my next thought when I realized that was, oh, I should go on the diet again, which again is what most people think, because that worked. And it doesn't take too long to realize you are stuck in that cycle. And when I realized it for myself, I said, okay, I need to do something different. I need to look at what's going on here. So I kind of put myself under a microscope to look at, what am I doing? What are the behaviors that are, getting in my way or impeding my weight? How is my relationship with food impacted? How am I using food in other ways? And I really looked at what I needed to change for myself. And I was able to do that. I was able to succeed. I've, been able to keep the weight off for 17 years, I think it's been. But I realized very quickly, I was a private practice psychologist at the time, and I was working a lot with women and body image. And I was realizing that almost everybody I was working with was doing the same thing I did, right? Was doing the back and forth on a diet, off a diet, on a diet, off a diet thing. And so I really wanted to figure out how to take what I'd done with myself and figure out a way to kind of package it up and make it accessible to everybody else. So that's what I did. And that's what I've been doing since. And I've just loved it because it presents such a fresh perspective to so many people and really allows people to finally feel in control of their own weight and their own bodies, which we never feel when we're dieting.
So I love that you integrate all those different parts of what you've learned to help other people. And it looks like I was looking at your website, which we will be sharing here, guys, and it looks like specific to this industry, the weight loss surgery industry, it looks like that you do pre-op evaluations, you do pre-surgery counseling to help set you up before surgery for success. You also do post-surgery counseling to help
Absolutely.
provide support, accountability, and check-ins post-operatively. But I also noticed that you offer a lot of different types of classes and books. Anything you want to say about that? We'll get more into that as we go through, but anything you want to say about that?
Well, like you said, I do offer all of that. I mean, there's so much involved in looking at your thinking and your behavior patterns, both pre and post bariatric surgery. And you know, there's a lot of nutrition education that comes pre-bariatric surgery, but not as much that's about lifestyle factors, behavioral factors, addressing your thinking patterns, and really changing your relationship with food. And it's an important thing to look at before surgery, but also an important thing to revisit post-surgery, especially 6 months post-surgery, you know, when you are able to eat with a little more regularity. And so that's something that I offer to everybody I work with, which I find to be really valuable. But yes, also I do have a lot of kind of what I call DIY programs for people who want to address different aspects of weight loss in their own time. I have programs for the perimenopausal and menopausal population, the PCOS population, for individuals who simply want to work on behavioral change for obesity or simply breaking dependence on diets. I do have a lot of programs that do that, as well as a ongoing weight loss coaching program for people who just want a little bit more support and hand holding through the process. So that's all stuff you can learn more about on my website.
That's wonderful. I just posted the link so people can kind of check that out, you know, after the event and kind of learn a little bit more about all of those different things. I also want to talk a little bit about like what we're going to be talking about today. I love this topic. I think, did you present this topic at Obesity Help?
I did, yes.
I thought this is great because I haven't heard of anybody else saying this, but I heard that, you know, the way that your kitchen is set up can make such a drastic effect on your lifestyle, your end result being your weight. So, you know, basically everything in our kitchens, from the decor to where things are actually placed, you know, where they're sitting, influences our eating behaviors, you know. And I guess today, from what I understand, you shared your presentation before with me, and it looks like, you know, that you have some really unique ideas about how to set up your kitchen, your cupboard, your fridge, your what dishes to serve with, all different kinds of great things. And I am so excited to have you here to talk about this. This is great.
Great. Should we jump into it?
Yeah, let's do. Everybody want her to jump in.
Let's see if I
it's
can
a question. Let us know.
My slides up here. All right, let's see if that updates. There we go. All right, so I'll just run through it. I'm guessing that if there's questions during, people could pop them in the Q&A, or I can take them at the end, whatever makes sense. I was telling Brenda before, I try and keep an eye on the Q&A, but if I miss it as we're going, I apologize, and I promise I'll get to it at the end. But yeah, let's jump into it. And Brenda, feel free to let me know if there's anything I need to respond to that I am missing.
I certainly will. I'm going to actually put myself on mute, but I'll be unmuting periodically. The reason
Great.
why I'm doing that is just so no background noise.
Great. Sounds good. All right. So we're talking about how to make over your kitchen for weight loss success. And as Brenda mentioned, this is really about some of these simple, basic things that you can do that will have an impact long-term over and over and over again, without you even potentially realizing the impact that they have. So this is me. You guys know who I am. We just kind of talked about this, so I'll jump right past that, and just hit on some of these statistics just to kind of help you realize why this is so important. As you probably all know, I mean, the weight loss industry and the dieting industry in the US is like a over $300 billion a year industry, and way more in America than in any other country. So clearly we have an issue, and a lot of this is because people go on and off and on and off, right? I mean, the dieting industry has repeat customers because we keep going back because we don't know what else to do. And my focus really is on helping people learn what else to do so that this is not something they do over and over and over again. Weight loss is not something that they keep having to repeat. It's something that they do once and that's it. And that's really the goal, so that we're not addicted, so that we're not part of any of these statistics anymore. So kitchen setup. Relatively simple thing, and something that most people don't really think about. I mean, when I ask people how they set up their kitchen or how they decide how they're going to set up their kitchen, there really isn't a process to it. You just kind of know, oh, the veggies go here, oh, the toaster goes there, the blender goes here, the utensils go there. You don't really think about it. And because we're not thinking about it, there are so many ways that this can contribute to mindless eating, unnecessary eating, triggering some issues we may have in our relationship with food. So when we do think about how we set up our kitchen and purposely adapt how we set up our kitchen, we're able to change some of that. And so I always tell people we really have to rethink these. And we know that small changes are truly what facilitate weight loss and weight management long term. So that's what I'm talking about here is a whole bunch of small changes that we can make that hopefully will facilitate your long-term weight management. So I'm going to walk through the kitchen kind of area by area and talk about some of these things that we can do. And the first thing I always talk about is the refrigerator, because if I asked you, what do you see when you first open your refrigerator doors? What's the first thing you see? And I'm guessing, unlike this clip art photo I have in here, it's actually not vegetables. And the reason for that is because most of us have a drawer at the bottom of our refrigerator that we stuff all our vegetables in. And the refrigerator industry told us that's where we're supposed to keep our vegetables. But here's why that's a problem. We are drawn to the first thing we see, and the first thing we see is at eye level. So when we open our fridge, what we see at eye level is not our vegetables. And we are more likely to eat that first thing we see. And we want to make that first thing we see be something good. So I always talk to people about making their healthy, good food choices in their fridge be front and center at eye level. And I realize eye level may be different for some people, as we all have height differences. So what is your eye level? And how can you start keeping your fruits, your veggies, your yogurts, your good foods, the foods that you want to draw yourself to? How can you keep them front and center in your refrigerator? And that usually means reorganizing your refrigerator. And that drawer at the bottom of your fridge, it's really not doing a whole lot to keep your vegetables fresher longer. And hopefully you're eating your vegetables pretty quick, so this isn't even an issue. And then I tell people, reserve that drawer down there for the junk, for the stuff that you maybe don't want to see or don't want to get drawn to. But really putting the good food front and center in your refrigerator is the most effective way to make you actually eat it. And tied into that, again, here's another lovely clip art of the way most people's refrigerators do not look, where you're seeing in this picture a whole lot of produce, very accessible, very at eye level. And that's a lot more of what we want to see. But not only do we want that food at eye level, we want to see it, which means we don't want it wrapped in tinfoil. We don't want it tucked away in opaque Tupperware that we can't see through. We want to make this something that we see, because that's how we're going to be drawn to it. So we want to be using things like saran wrap, like clear Tupperware, like mason jars, things that actually allow us to see the food that we want to eat. And then once again, let's save the tinfoil or the opaque Tupperware for the stuff that maybe we don't want to see or that we don't want to get drawn to. Wrap it in something dark and opaque and tuck it away in those drawers at the bottom so that you're significantly less likely to go to it, because we go to what we see and we go to what's at eye level. So we want to see it and we want to make it right there. Also, in regards to our fridge, we want this good food to be accessible. And what I mean by that is you are a lot more likely to eat a red pepper that's been washed and chopped and sitting in a mason jar than you are to eat a red pepper that has not been touched yet. And the more you can make your good food accessible, meaning immediately ready to eat, the more likely you are to eat it. And an example I give a lot to my patients is, let's say you're making eggs in the morning, and you pull out the eggs when you open the fridge, and maybe you see an onion in there. And you think for a second, oh, well, I could chop up that onion and put it in my omelet, put it in my eggs, but that's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do it. Now, in that same situation, if you were to open your fridge to pull out your eggs and you saw a Tupperware container or a mason jar filled with pre-chopped onion, where all you had to do was literally just dump that onion in the pan, the odds of you putting that onion into your eggs have just skyrocketed from where they were before when you just saw that dirty old uncut onion sitting in there. And that is about accessibility. We want our food to be as accessible as possible. And I encourage people to wash and chop their food right when they bring it into their house before they even put it in their fridge. So when you come in from grocery shopping, chop up that onion, chop up that pepper, wash and slice those carrots, do whatever you need to do to make that food accessible to you so that when you do open the fridge and see it in clear containers at eye level, you're that much more likely to use it. So the pantry is no different here. The pantry, we want our good food front and center. We want our good food accessible. We want our good food visible. And all of this ties into a lot of data that's been, a lot of research that's been done on this, which basically shows us that we are 3 times more likely to eat the first food we see in the cupboard than the 5th. So the first food that we see is the one we are more likely to eat. So if we are opening that pantry and seeing chips or crackers and we're having to hunt to find the healthy food, we are probably going to eat chips and crackers. So we want to make that healthy food be the first thing we see. And again, we do that by putting it front and center, making it visible, and potentially making it accessible in the same way we do in the fridge. And accessibility, just a note on accessibility in the pantry in particular. Everybody knows what this image is and can relate to this, the Costco shopping or the Sam's Club shopping, the big bulk shopping. And these things are great for budget-minded people, for people who eat a lot of the same things or are feeding a large family. They're fantastic. But Costco is a portion nightmare. And you can get a giant container of cashews from Costco. And the problem with this is that you have very little ability to judge a portion size from that container because it is so massive. You can eat and eat and eat out of it, and it doesn't feel like you're even making a dent. So you don't have anything registering for you how much you've actually eaten. So when we talk about making food accessible in the pantry, and we talk about things that come in large packaging, I encourage people to break down that large packaging into individual portions as soon as possible, ideally right when you get home from Costco. So if you have a giant container of cashews from Costco, when you come home, before you put everything away, bust out some mini Ziploc bags, some mini Tupperware, some mini mason jars, whatever it may be, and portion it all out for yourself. And I always add a quick note here when I talk about using those mini Ziplocs, it's not wasteful. You can wash and reuse them every time you go to Costco. So you don't have to throw them out. So there's no worry about having them be wasteful in that respect. But what happens when you do this is when you open your cabinet and you go to get cashews, you're going to take a Ziploc bag of cashews. You're not going to take the entire container of cashews, which is really what we want to control our portion intake. So moving on, let's talk about the countertop. We've talked about the fridge, we've talked about the pantry. Now let's talk about what's on our counter. So there are 3 things I encourage people to keep on their counter: pre-washed fruits and veggies, spices, and water. And I'm going to talk about all 3 of these. So I was talking about how we're more prone to eat the first thing we see in the fridge and in the pantry. Well, the first thing we see is actually on our countertop, because we don't have to open a door to get to it. We don't have to open a pantry door. We don't have to open a fridge door. It's just there. So the countertop is actually where the first thing we see is. So if we can have pre-washed fruits and veggies out there, again, we are a lot more likely to eat them. But this is also true if we have a bag of chips out there. This is also true if we have cereal out there. This is also true if we have bread out there, whatever else we have out there, we are more likely to eat it. So from a food standpoint, what I encourage people to have is pre-washed fruits and veggies, and that is it. No other food out on the counter. So many people keep food on the counter, and guess what? That's the food that they eat. So we want to make the food that's out on our counter the food that we want to be drawn to, and then nothing else. Here's my 2 exceptions. Spices. Spices, herbs, right? These are things that are wonderful opportunities to add flavor and nuance to our food without adding calories, without adding fat, without adding any of these other things. And a lot of them can actually help some of the biological processes involved in weight management. And I do have my top 5 spices, but you can keep any of them out, because simply keeping them out will make you use them. If you have, a little garlic jar sitting out on your counter, you are much more likely to use it on your food than if it's tucked away in a cabinet where you can't see it. So my top 5 spices that I encourage people to keep out are turmeric, because turmeric is a wonderful anti-inflammatory, and inflammation is something that can stand in the way of an effective metabolism. Number 2 is cinnamon, because cinnamon is a wonderful spice for balancing blood sugar. And when we can keep our blood sugar in check, we can control our insulin levels, which means we can control fat storage. So all of that is something powerful that we get from cinnamon. Number 3 is cayenne pepper, because of the metabolism benefits we get from it. As you know, we talk about this idea of burning calories, right? And we use the word burning because it's a heat component, and cayenne creates heat in our body, and so it does help our metabolism. The 4th one is ginger, again, because of its wonderful anti-inflammatory properties. And then the last one is garlic. 1, because I love garlic and I want to put it on everything, but 2, because it does help your body burn fat. And so again, having all of these things out on your countertop means you're that much more likely to use them. And the 3rd thing I tell people to keep out on their counter is water. Hopefully for obvious reasons now, but because if it's out, you're more likely to drink it. And we want to be drinking as much water as we can all the time, especially if it means we're not drinking calorie-laden, sugar-laden beverages, right? So having water out just makes us that much more likely to drink it. And some quick statistics, research-based data that they found on this is women who left cereal out on their countertop weighed on average 20 pounds more than women who didn't. Women who left soda, pop for wherever you are, soda or pop, out on their countertop weighed on average 26 pounds more than women who didn't. Women who left fresh fruit out on their countertop weighed on average 13 pounds less than women who didn't. And so this is research that has kind of normalized everything else and looked at these primary things as being the differential. Simply what you keep out on your countertop has a very direct impact on your weight. So hopefully that kind of changes your approach to it. So these are the, yeah, go ahead, please.
I just had a question. So the herbs that you mentioned, the turmeric, the cinnamon, the cayenne pepper, the ginger, and the garlic, I'm used to using some of those herbs with my everyday cooking, you know.
Awesome.
But I'm wondering, do you have any suggestions for each of those? Some things
Sure.
that you might use them for? Because I mean, like turmeric, cinnamon, and ginger specific. Well, cayenne pepper even. Really, those things I don't. I have them in my cabinet, but I don't always use them quite frequently.
Well, cayenne pepper is probably the simplest one because any dish that you have that you think can stand a little bit of heat, cayenne pepper can go into. One that people don't always think about is hot chocolate. If you drink hot chocolate, it's also known as a Mexican hot chocolate, to add a little bit of pepper, hot pepper, into your hot chocolate. But really, cayenne pepper is anything you can add heat to. Cinnamon goes really nicely with anything in the orange family. So sweet potatoes, butternut squash, things along, even orange peppers, cinnamon goes really nicely with. Cinnamon and ginger are actually fun things to play with in sweet treats, baking, and things like if you ever do ice cream or banana-based ice creams, cinnamon and ginger are actually really fun things to incorporate into those. And then ginger and turmeric, both, and garlic, of course, go really nicely into any stew, any stir fry, any soups, anything in that category. And also turmeric and cinnamon are things that you can also add into a smoothie or a protein shake or something along those lines. So those are fun ways to play with those as well.
Thank you for that. It sounds like they're kind of like little superfoods.
Yes, they're fantastic. Yeah, they're just like bonus on top of whatever you're eating. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Amara says any kind of chocolate with cayenne is amazing. That's a great
suggestion. Agreed. If you like spicy, right? If you don't, you're just not going to get the benefit out of it. But yeah, you can find, even chocolate bars that are already combined with cayenne pepper. And when I talk about chocolate bars, I always talk about trying to find good quality chocolate, right? High cacao content, low sugar content. But yeah, you do find these combined with chocolate, and you can find hot chocolate mixes that already have cayenne in them, but it's a really, really easy thing to sprinkle in. And if you're putting in your own, then obviously you can control how spicy it is to your taste thresholds. All right, so moving on, we're talking about having these 3 different things on your countertop. But what I suggest people have on their countertop other than that is absolutely nothing, or as close to nothing as you can possibly get. This is a really, really tough one for people because we keep a lot of things on our countertop. But ultimately what this does is it creates a cluttered space in our kitchen. And I say all the time, not just of our kitchen, of any space, cluttered space equals cluttered mind. When we're in a cluttered environment, we feel that. And that translates to stress in some way for most of us. And what are a lot of us drawn to when we feel stressed? Food, right? A lot of us are prone to stress eating. And if our kitchen is an environment that makes us feel stressed, it's that much easier to eat as a result of that. And the research has shown us that women who are in messy kitchens eat 100 calories more at every meal or snack. Every meal or snack, 100 calories more. You don't need to be a mathematician to see how quickly that adds up. And you can control that impact by simply having an uncluttered kitchen. And I'm throwing in a couple images just to kind of clarify what I mean here. We keep a lot of things out on our countertop. And I always ask people, does that need to be there? Does it make a difference to you if you have a dish towel in a drawer or you have a dish towel hanging on your stove? Does it make a difference to you if you have the blender out on the countertop or you have the blender in your cabinet? Do you need to have your coffee maker out? Can it be behind a cabinet or behind a drawer? Do you need to have things on your fridge? Is there somewhere else you can do that? Can you put a bulletin board somewhere else and put pictures and things like that up there? Do you need to have aprons hanging, or can you put them in a drawer? And really, it comes down to how often do you use these things. If you're using things multiple times a day, every day, then yeah, it probably does make your life a lot easier to have it out on the countertop. But if you're using it once a week or less, maybe it doesn't need to be on your countertop. Maybe it can be tucked away. And looking at these two pictures, you can see how much of a difference it makes to put some of this stuff away, right? If you're using your blender on Saturday mornings only, it probably doesn't need to live on your countertop. If you use your toaster once in a blue moon, it probably doesn't need to live on your countertop. So I really encourage people to look at their kitchen and think about what they're really using all the time and what needs to live out there, as opposed to what can go away to create an uncluttered space. And if you're unsure, try putting it away and see how you do with it being away. And then you can kind of assess if it's hugely problematic for you to not have it out on the countertop and reintroduce it. But a lot of times people put all this stuff away and they love the look and feel of it so much that they don't mind pulling it out to use it whenever it does come into play.
Candice, is this a service you offer? I'm
I
like, these are
will-
pretty amazing pictures. When you saw
Yes.
especially that last slide and this one here, I'm like, okay, that's pretty incredible. It doesn't make
Yeah.
a big difference. Like the whole overall feel, it looks like a whole different kitchen. Both of them.
It makes a huge difference. And yes, I do help everyone I work with this. I actually do have like a household makeover intensive where I do spend a week with people in their homes and help them make over their homes. I don't do that as frequently, but I do this as part of that process. But I'm happy to coach people through this process. And I would say the easiest first step is put everything away and then see what you need. See what you keep pulling out and what needs to live out on your counter versus what you're okay with having be away.
And what I would also just kind of add to that too, you know, sometimes I personally, some of the reasons that I leave things out is because they're large, bulky, they're heavy to and out and having room. I have a very, very spacious kitchen with a lot of cabinets, but even at that, like things like my air fryer, like you mentioned, the toaster. Any suggestions for people? Maybe you don't, but like what happens if maybe you just get rid of other stuff that you don't use in your cabinet to make room for those things, right?
Yeah. And some people have plenty of room and it's just a matter of putting it away. Other people, you know, cabinet space and drawer space is a big issue. So then you need to look at how to prioritize or how to create space elsewhere. Maybe you don't have a lot of cabinet space in your pantry, but you have, in your kitchen, but you have a large pantry. Or you have extra storage space in a garage with shelves that you can put things, right? And it may be about thinking outside the box a little bit about where you can put things, and then also assessing what you have that you never use. And maybe that's living in a cabinet in your kitchen, and that can go away somewhere else. And then the thing that you use once a week can go into that cabinet space. So yeah, you do have to take it individually and say, what am I using? What needs to be here? What needs to be out? And it's a process of reevaluating all of that.
And really, how long does it actually take to get something out of a cabinet? For example, like a blender, like literally it's just picking it up and putting it up.
Yeah,
like
10, 15 seconds. Yep, yeah. But again, if you're using that blender 3 times a day, maybe it really does make sense for it to live on your counter. But if you're using that blender once a week, then it probably doesn't. So everyone kind of needs to assess based on their own needs and usage.
Very good.
All right, so let's move on and talk about what's in our cabinets. And obviously plates are most likely in your cabinets. And plate size is one of those things, again, that we don't really think about. Somewhere, sometime, somebody decided that a dinner plate is supposed to be 12 inches. And so all of us have dinner plates that are 12 inches. But 12 inches is not actually ideal for us. What is ideal is 10 inches, which is the size of an average salad plate. And here's why. We are more likely to reach a place of satiation, right? That pleasant feeling of fullness when we perceive ourselves as eating a lot of food, as opposed to actually eating a lot of food. So my point here is that perception is much more a part of our feeling of fullness. So it's really how much we think we are taking in versus how much we are actually taking in. So if I gave you a 2-ounce portion of pasta and I put it on an average dinner plate, it wouldn't look like much. But if I put it on a salad plate, it would look like a solid serving of pasta. And then your brain says, I'm eating a solid serving of pasta. So that perception, that idea of how much we think we are taking in is a huge factor to our satiety. And the data very, very much supports this. And it has found that when people use a 10-inch plate instead of a 12-inch plate, we consume 22% less calories at every meal. And again, you don't need to be a mathematician to see how quickly that adds up. If you are eating 22% less calories at every meal, simply because you're using a different size plate, not because you are changing the food that you are eating. The food is the same, just on a smaller size plate, and you naturally eat less. So I encourage everybody to start eating on salad plates. Put those giant plates away and just start eating on salad plates and see what happens. Again, I'm not talking about changing what you eat at all, just the size of the plate that you eat off of, and see what kind of an impact it has. It's usually a very easy change for people to make because they have these other plates already. And if you don't, get a set and see how you do with it. But also tied to plates is plate color. So again, I talked about this idea of perception, right? And how what we perceive ourselves as eating is such a big factor to our satiety. And we perceive ourselves as eating more when we can have that sort of accurate perception of food. And the problem with this is that most people have white plates and a lot of food is white. If you think about it, right? Bread and fish and pasta and potatoes and cauliflower and rice, and there's so many foods that are white. And when you eat white foods off a white plate, you don't have an accurate perception of how much you've eaten because it just sort of blends in. And if you were eating that white food off of a blue plate, you would have a much clearer perception of how much you were eating. And when our food is the same color as our plate, we eat 18% more at every meal. So simply making sure our food is a different color from our plate, and hopefully a 10-inch plate, not a 12-inch plate, helps us eat less over the course of every meal. So I actually encourage people to have 2 different colored plates. I encourage them to have a white set and a colored set, so that based on what they're eating, they can choose the color plate that is different from the color food that they are eating. And again, for both of these, I encourage those to be 10-inch plates, not 12-inch plates, so that not only are we able to perceive the amount of food we're eating, but we're able to perceive the food as being separate and distinct from the plate color.
Candice, we have at our house, we have something called Fiesta ware. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, multicolored.
Yes, it's like, I put it in the chat box, Fiesta ware. But it's basically my set of Fiesta ware. You can buy the plates, each plate setting in a different color. And I literally have 12 or 13 different colors. So I wait and
that's perfect.
I eat on what color I'm in the mood for.
That's perfect. And hopefully what color contrasts most with your food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I love it. And it works good for all different kinds of events too.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's fun. All right, so glassware too in your cabinets. So again, going back to the idea of perception here, we process height over width when it comes to volume. So we perceive tall glasses as having more liquid in them than wide glasses, even when they have the same amount of liquid. So what that means is if we have a choice, we want to opt for tall, thin glasses as opposed to short, wide glasses, because again, we're going to perceive ourselves as taking in more liquid and ultimately feeling more content, more satiated, more of that pleasant feeling of fullness. And incidentally, this also goes for wine. There are different size wine glasses, and white wine glasses are taller and thinner, and red wine glasses are shorter and wider. So for wine, I encourage everybody to drink everything, even red wine, out of a white wine glass for this purpose, because you're going to perceive yourself as taking in more because of that height differential, because we perceive height over width when it comes to glassware. So that's just an important note in terms of if you drink, this doesn't count for water, but if you drink anything that's, sugar, alcohol, calorie laden, you want to be drinking it out of a taller, thinner glassware. In regards to cutlery, cutlery has a lot of value in being smaller to make us eat slower. And I'm not going to go into mindful eating too much or the value of slowing down your eating, but we do have a time process in terms of feeling full. And so the longer it takes us to eat, the more likely we are to get those hormones released that tell us we're full, leptin and CCK, which are our satiety hormones. And if we can slow down our eating speed, we can get to that satiety place faster. And eating with smaller cutlery helps us do that. So I always encourage people, if you have regular forks and salad forks, use your salad forks. If you have big spoons and small spoons, use your small spoons. If you have a child and you have some of that, toddler cutlery, use that for yourself to eat with. Alternatively, you can play with eating chopsticks, which is a great way to make sure you're slowing down your eating, because you can only get so much in there and, in one spoonful, one handful. So the smaller your cutlery, the slower you're going to eat, and the more likely you are to achieve that feeling of satiety and that idea of, okay, I can stop eating without having taken in quite as much. So looking at smaller cutlery size can help a lot as well.
And Candice, I want to add to that too. I know a lot of times too with the amount of food we put in our mouths. One thing that I kind of learned for myself, I had weight loss surgery back in 2013. And if you put a very large piece, let's just say meat, for example, if you put a very large piece of meat in your mouth and you chew it up, your tendency is not to swallow in like little small portions. The tendency is just to swallow the whole thing.
Big hunk. Yep.
Yes. And so cutting your food up in smaller bites before you put it in your mouth would be really helpful. I know we did a little survey whenever I was working for a bariatric surgery program as a coordinator. We had a lot of patients returning back early post-op with problems with nausea and vomiting. And what we found, and you can probably relate to this, especially if you're seeing patients post-operatively, especially early, is that the behaviors that we've learned our whole life is crazy. And, eating small bites, eating smaller portions, chewing your food good is so important. And what we found is we had a lot of people have nausea and vomiting early post-op, and we would do EGDs on them, like scopes, to look to see if their anatomy was normal. And what we found is their anatomy was normal, but their behaviors that they learned, that eating too fast, taking too large portions, that type of thing was affecting. And we started having our patients follow up with behavioral health regarding these things, and it really changed that early post-op nausea thing. So
Yep. Well, and slowing down your eating has always been kind of a thing. And people have probably heard this, like count your bites and chew this many bites, but the number of bites you take doesn't matter if the bite you're taking is massive, right? You're still going to end up with a large hunk of food that you're swallowing after a certain point. So cutting up your food really small and or using smaller cutlery will actually make sure those initial bites that you're taking are already small, so that the chewing that you're doing is getting your food to that place where it is more digestible and easier to break down. So I like to talk about the overall kitchen vibe and the way you can use your kitchen to talk to yourself a little bit And what I mean by this is putting reminders or notes or quotes or pictures or lists or anything in your kitchen to tie in to your goals, your motivation, your focus, the things that we tend to forget when we're in our kitchen. So, for example, if you are trying to get healthier and really want to focus on that, having a reminder somewhere in your kitchen, maybe it's a quote that you really like, or maybe it's a list of things that you want to focus on, or maybe it's just a simple note to yourself that says, remember your health, right? Something that just helps your brain connect the dots in that moment when you're hungry and looking for food with what you're trying to achieve. And an example of that is I had one patient who was she worked from home, still does. The mindless grazer would just, every hour kind of get bored with work and wander through the kitchen and grab food. And we made a plan for her to do 60 seconds of squats before she ate anything. And the idea was she's going to use that 60 seconds to do squats, and it would just give her a moment of pause to say, do I actually want to eat, or was I just needing a break from work? And what she did is she put a picture of, like a clip art picture of somebody doing squats on her fridge and in her pantry, like in the cupboard door. So anytime she walked in the kitchen, she saw that and went, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do that. And so she went back and she did her squats and then kind of reassessed. I have somebody else who had, a quote about the difference between making decisions in the moment that don't really fuel, your long-term goals, and making kind of the decisions that really do fuel your long-term goals. And it was a quote that she really liked, and she just taped it up on her fridge. So she saw it every time she was in her kitchen. And it just reminded her about what she was doing and what she really wanted, and connected her back to her goals. And so your kitchen is a space you can use to take advantage to really talk to yourself a little bit and remind yourself about what you really are trying to do, because we lose sight of it so easily when we're in the moment and we're engaging in some of these mindless behaviors. So anything you do like that helps bring you back to mindfulness. And that's really what we want in that moment, is to be more mindful. So find ways to use your kitchen to talk to yourself. And then within that kitchen vibe, I always encourage people to throw in some red, because red is a subconscious signal for danger, as we all know. It is a subconscious signal for stopping. When I ask people, what do they associate with the color of red? They almost always say a red light or stop sign. So in our brain, without even thinking, the color red signals stopping. So if you can infuse your kitchen with a little bit of red, like this picture, or maybe a napkin, or maybe a picture, or maybe a piece of art, or an apron, or anything that you can throw in some red, you might be surprised by the subtle unconscious ways it may signal your body to stop, either stop going towards the kitchen or to stop eating when you're full. But just giving yourself the opportunity to have that unconscious reminder of stopping can be very valuable. So just quick recap on some of the things to change. And some of you may have already done some of these things. Some of you may have not. So there may be things that are more valuable than others. But for both your fridge and your pantry, you want to put the healthy foods that you want to draw yourself to at eye level. You want them in visible containers. You want them washed and prepped and chopped and any other way accessible. And the foods that you don't want to draw yourself to, you want them tucked away somewhere, hidden, opaque, so that you don't see them and you kind of forget about them. With your large packaging, you want to break that down as much as possible into single-serve portions. On your countertops, we want pre-washed fruits and veggies, the spices that we want to use, and water only. And otherwise, we want nothing or close to nothing else out on our countertops. We want them as zenned out as possible. We want to be using 10-inch plates instead of 12-inch plates, and ideally different color plates from the food that we're eating. We want to be using tall, thin glassware instead of short, wide glassware. We want to be using smaller cutlery or chopsticks. We want to take out an opportunity to talk to ourselves wherever we can in the kitchen and remind ourselves of our goals. And we want to throw a little splash of red here and there where we can in our kitchens to signal that unconscious cue to stop. So those are my suggestions. I think, Brenda, you'll probably throw in some of my contact info as well, but I'm happy to take questions privately, because of kind of the nature of what I do as a psychologist. A lot of times people have questions that they don't necessarily want to ask in a public forum, or, that they do feel are more personal or more private. So I'm happy to take questions via email as well for anybody that wants to ask them that way. But I'm also happy to take questions now or to discuss further. I'm not sure if there were any that came up that I missed, but yeah, wherever we can go from here.
It looks like we have, Jill says she's going to be implementing some things right away.
Oh, good.
I asked in the comments what things that was she thinking, and she said clearing counters. And I love that, because no matter what, I think we can always find ways to declutter even more. I made it a goal. I've moved so many times in the last few years that, it makes you go through your stuff and makes you get rid of things. But I found I made it a goal, like every year, to go through each of my rooms and just kind of declutter and declutter. And I know it sounds silly. Like, where does this stuff come from? Like, where does it come from? So,
and again, cluttered space equals cluttered mind. And, I talk to people about 3 primary areas with that. One is their kitchen, one is their desk, and one is their closet. And fourth sometimes is their nightstand, or, what's right by them in their bed, because these are places where stress has a big impact. And, I talked about your kitchen, right? If you're feeling stressed and you're drawn to food when you feel stressed, if you're feeling stressed in your kitchen, hey, there's where all the food is. But if you're feeling stressed at your desk, right? If your desk is a cluttered space, it's going to impact your work productivity. If your nightstand is a cluttered space, it's going to impact your ability to fall asleep. If your closet is a cluttered space, I always tell people your closet is probably the place you go to every day, first thing in the morning, that sets the tone for your day. So if that's a cluttered space, you start your day by feeling stressed and, having that kind of permeate your day. So looking at all 4 of those spaces regularly and decluttering them on a regular basis, it can be really, really valuable to decreasing your overall stress level.
I'm pasting your contact information here too.
Oh, great.
I agree with you. Robin says, "Oh my God, I'm a single gal, and I swear I declutter daily, but I'm not sure better behind." I understand. I think part of it too is, for me, I work remotely, and so I'm at my house all the time, and I usually spend about an hour in the mornings just like throwing a load of laundry in, doing my dishes, making up my bed, that kind of, like, all of the daily kind of things. And I think sometimes, where in the world, like, I'm cleaning up after myself, because my husband, he's told me, he's like, "I don't think any of this stuff's mine. Like, why do you?" I'm like, I know, I don't know what happened here. But no, it's so helpful. And also, I want to kind of just mention too that you have a handout, I guess you might say, that you were going to offer to people. And so I'm going to share that link. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I will do that as well. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to look here on Facebook too while I'm getting ready to do that. I don't see anything there yet. Okay. So this link is actually, it was non-diet weight loss tips.
I think it might be non-diet tips guide.
Non-diet tips
Oh yeah,
guide.
non-diet weight loss tips. You're right. Yay.
I'm just simply looking at the link itself, but it could be named something different.
Yeah, no, non-dietweightlosstips.com for a guide to my favorite non-diet tips, some of which may have a little bit of overlap with some of the stuff we've talked about today, but some that look at different things that you can do during mealtime and just in your relationship with food to kind of naturally lead to weight loss, obviously without dieting. So
I'm going to go back. I'll post it on Facebook here for those people that are listening there. And that's wonderful. One other thing I want to just share too. Well, one thing I want to ask you before we kind of close on your part is there somebody specifically, like who do you normally, I think I asked you before the call, who do you normally see? Like whenever you're working with patients, who is your person that typically sees you for
Well,
work?
typically it's somebody, not dissimilar from the way I described myself, somebody who has a dieting history, sometimes a long dieting history, but is fed up and frustrated and knows that that's not the long-term solution, but doesn't quite know what to do. So I always say the people I work with are not people that really need nutrition education. They know that an apple is healthier than a cookie, but they really want to know why they keep choosing the cookie instead of the apple when they know that. And so it becomes looking at what are the other factors that are driving you to that and how can you make change. So they're dieters that want to lose weight, that want to manage their weight long term, again, without having to diet anymore, because we know that doesn't work. We know 98% of diets fail, but we keep doing that because we don't know what else to do. And my goal is to help people figure out themselves in a way for them that is the what else to do piece.
Wonderful. And you do this virtually, correct? So like if
Yes, all
you
via
live in
video.
California, so they
Yeah.
can
Yep.
access you. And you offer consultation calls just to kind of see if
Yep.
it's a good match for.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a free consultation, just, as a chance for us to get to know each other, for me to kind of understand the person's goals and yes, to make sure that it's a good fit before we were to move forward.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, I'm going to also share a little bit about our sponsor. So, guys, a lot of you know that ProCare Health is our sponsor, and we have been sharing like little tips and tricks at the end here. And today, I thought this would be fun. Like, how do I set up my kitchen to include my vitamins and supplements? And while you were talking, I feel like one of those things is, having a designated spot to easily be accessible to act as a reminder. And for me, what I do is I actually have a place in my cupboard that's kind of front and foremost, that's a bag that I put all of my supplements in. My vitamins, fiber, anything, my supplements, all of that thing, I have them all in a set place. But what I find is I also have I'm going to call it a bowl that I put on my countertop, and I get out my supplements in the morning and I put them in on my countertop in a specific place. Like so that I don't have everything out, like every single supplement, I don't have them out all the time, but I have a spot where I put them during the day. And what that helps me with is stop sharing here. What that helps me with is it helps me to remember. I'll see them sitting there. So I take some of them in the morning, like I take my vitamins in the morning, and then during the day I take my calcium supplements because I usually split those out from my vitamin, and so my multivitamin, and so having it there, it reminds me to take them. Now, whenever I was not working from home, I was working at the office setting. I would bring them along in like a little baggie or something, and then I would have them. Actually, I think I actually kept them at my office, and I had them right by my computer, and I'd set them out in the morning and set out what I needed because I was there in that spot most of the day. So, depending on where you are for most of the day, Donnie says we need to modify a way for truckers to eat. Do you have any suggestions with that? That is a great thing because I mean it's a great question.
I mean, I'm assuming that question is about for people who are kind of on the road and don't have regular access to a kitchen. And, it's obviously going to be specific to each scenario, but we have to look at what are the portable ways to eat, right? What are things that we can prep that are easy, that don't require refrigeration? Do you have refrigeration overnight and can you have a cooler, right? Are these things like, can I chop up celery and carrots and ranch dressing or hummus or things like that I can keep with me in a cooler all day that I can be snacking on? Can I find, healthy, go to things like oat bars or some of the healthier protein bars that I can be munching on, right? Things like hard-boiled eggs that are usually very portable. It's really about looking at how do we get some of these healthy foods that are more portable that can either be prepped ahead of time or don't require prep, and using the time when you are having access to a kitchen to do a little bit more of that prep work to get that food accessible to you. So it's going to be specific person to person, of course. And, some people have more access than others.
And I've even heard of people who are on the road. Like we had, whenever I was working in the role I did before as a nurse in the clinic setting with bariatric surgery patients, we had at least one that I remember specifically that was a trucker. And what he said he did is and you maybe mentioned this, I was kind of multitasking by typing, but he said that he kept a cooler with him and he would fill that cooler with a lot of snacks.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times it's not just the meals, it's the snacks. And so he always made sure he had food that he could eat along, because you can't always rely on truck stops. You can't, I mean, there's certain ways. I don't know if that was something that you mentioned, Candice. I apologize if I'm repeating.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, it's the same message. It's about what can you prepare ahead of time and what can you make accessible to yourself that's healthy, right? And I look at what are some of the more shelf-stable vegetables, right, that you can be snacking on. Obviously, fruits are a really good option for, on the go. And then what things can you prepare ahead of time that are easy to be eating while you're on the road?
One other thing, too, that kind of comes to mind is people who are traveling, not just a trucker, but people who are traveling, like flying a lot or on the road a lot for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Anything applies.
Yep.
I heard a program recently, somebody was talking about this gentleman who is a speaker and he travels all over. And I think he did like 47 or 50 events last year. And he was talking about that, and his program was Wild Fit. I don't know if you guys have heard that. It's a Mind Valley program. And he was talking about what he does. And he actually brings a little bullet along with him, and he brings pre-portioned protein along. He brings he thinks ahead. And that's what it is, just what you said.
You have to, yeah.
And how are you going to get past some of the obstacles? Like, what are the obstacles? Like maybe it's that you want a protein supplement. Maybe it's that you want, trying to think, maybe that it's you want more fruits and vegetables. You can bring some of those things. I think you can fly with fruits and vegetables. I mean, that's what he talked about. He did.
Mm-hmm.
He brought them along, whether you can't, I don't know if you can, he actually brought them on the plane. So I'm thinking you can, I don't think there's any.
Yeah. Well, and also it depends on the nature of the travel, right? If you're on a plane for 16 hours and you need to be talking about how you fuel yourself during the plane ride, sometimes it's about how you take care of yourself when you're in a hotel room for several days. And I do have a lot of people that I work with that travel a lot for work. And oftentimes it's about, let me look where I'm going. I have an Uber from the airport to the hotel. And along the way, I'm going to find a grocery store and I'm going to stop and I'm going to pick up these 10 items. And I've already called the hotel and asked them to put a mini fridge in my room. And now I have, I'm going to make oatmeal for my breakfast in the morning. And I've brought stuff to make myself a veggie crudité for a snack. And I've got stuff to make a sandwich for lunch. And I've got fruit for all of my snacks. And, I've even bought some pre-made meals from Whole Foods that I'm just going to heat up in the microwave for dinner. And, how can you plan ahead if you are going to be away from your home or away from a kitchen for an extended period of time? So it really is specific situation to situation, but really looking at it. And again, like you said, planning ahead. Which is key to all of that.
Such great ideas. I love that you talked about stopping at grocery stores, because it's sometimes hard to find just like little mini snacks for people who've had weight loss surgery at a motel, at wherever, a lot of times you're buying these huge meals. So thank you for that. And I know we're right at the end of time. So we just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. And, reach out. There's always support. Candice is here. I'm here. I'm going to put I have Candice's email. I have her website and how to connect with her on socials. Also her 9 diet tips guide. And then I'm going to also put my email It's my last name, my first initial at procarenow.com. If you have any questions or anything, and I will copy these over to Facebook as soon as we get done here. So thank you, everybody, and take care. Have a wonderful Easter. I know for those of you who celebrate that. If not, just have a great weekend. So thank you so much. And Candice, I'm going to be ending, and then you and I will be here together in